So good evening, friends. Welcome to the India Power Talk. I am glad that many of you have sent very encouraging messages on the previous talks. India Power Talk, in association with the Indian Chamber of Commerce, the oldest chambers in India, is an effort to seek and constructive suggestions from the international leaders on what could be done to revive Indian economy. We would be, as mentioned, we would be inviting entrepreneurs, economists, professors, investment bankers, scientists, lawyers, chartered accountants, and professionals having experience from diverse sectors who could contribute on the subject. As mentioned in my last talk, the global lockdown due to coronavirus continues to bleed the economies of several countries. However, fortunately, in comparison to the other countries, we in India have been successful in preventing the spread and also the death toll substantially. A question is, how do we rise from here and maybe seize this opportunity and try to become a significant part of the global economy, not just in manufacturing, but also in services. I guess we may also have to look at several alternate avenues and explore opportunities. One such avenue is blue economy. India has vast coastline of around 7,517 kilometers and land frontier of around 15,200 kilometers, which needs to be fully tapped. And to talk on this blue economy and the opportunities, we have today a distinguished and well-recognized Mr. Sunil Muralidhar Shastri from London. But before I ask him to speak, let me give a short introduction of our speaker today. Sunil Muralidhar Shastri is a consultant, expert, and speaker in ocean and environmental governance for over 3 decades. He found his passion in PASEM in Maribus in 1982 under the tutelage of Elizabeth Mann-Borges and has since made it his mission. He is best known internationally for his masterclass in ocean and environmental governance and for his erudite analysis and candid opinions. Sunil has attended the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, International Ocean Institute, Aken Technical Institute, Dalhousie University, London School of Economics, and Harvard Kennedy School, supported throughout by the prestigious scholarships. In past, Sunil has been an academic and researcher in marine and mining engineering and environmental policy. He has been in UK since 1988. Long career. We once again welcome Sunil on this India Power Talk. A blue economy in India. The blue economy, which consists of economic activities dependent on marine resources, comprises 4.1% of the India's economy as reported by the government. However, it appears that this number has been underestimated as a lot of economic activities relating to blue economy goes unreported. As an expert on the blue economy and having taught this subject for over 3 decades, so could you give a very broad perspective about global blue economy and also about India?
That ocean is 70% of the Earth's surface area. But that's only one way of looking at it. If you look at the living space in the ocean, it is 99%. Is 90% of all trade is by the sea. The world produces 100 million tons of fish, that is capture fishery, and 50 million tons of mariculture. Much of it is in the coastal region. Ocean do 50% of carbon absorption, and it is also absorbing all our waste. Oceans are called the global dustbin. You know, everything, 90% of the pollution ends up in the sea. And the ocean keep our planet livable. Without ocean, our temperatures will be extreme, like on the moon. Very, very hot during the day, very, very cold during the night. So what is blue economy? So blue economy is defined by the World Bank as a sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods, so that's where the people come in, and jobs, while preserving the health of the ocean ecosystem. What are the various governance features of blue economy? So I mentioned the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which came in 1982. And at the same time, 10 years later, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change came about. Okay. So these two framework conventions, they guide the blue economy. There are other organizations such as the International Maritime Organization, which looks after shipping, safe shipping. There are Commonwealth Secretariat, which is a smaller organization, but global organization of all the former Commonwealth countries. They have got a Commonwealth Blue Charter also.
Sure.
Closer to our home, we have got something called the Indian Ocean Rim Association. And even India has got interests in Antarctica. So we are not part of the Antarctica Treaty System as such, but we are members of the Antarctica Treaty System.
Okay.
And we are also on the Arctic Council as observers. So let me very quickly also give you some comparisons.
Sure.
What is the total economy and what is the blue economy?
Yes.
So if you see the global economy, it's 90 trillion, of which blue economy is 3 trillion, which is about 3%.
Okay.
And our economy, which is 2.7 trillion, has a blue economy component of $110 billion.
Could you please dwell more into the blue economy in India, India, its length and breadth and the opportunities? We'll talk about the challenges later, but
Yes.
let's just understand the opportunities to drive the Indian economy as far as blue economy is concerned.
Blue economy has got some quite significant components.
Sure.
So the tangibles are ones that we know of, like shipping and navigation, or ports and harbors, or resources, living and non-living resources, energy resources, mineral resources, and so on. We also have just talked about waste disposal. Then we have got strategic uses, navy, but leisure and tourism, pipelines and cables. And then there are some intangible ones, which are things like marine scientific research, biodiversity conservation, habitat management, climate control, which I mentioned, and then of course, there are also what we call as illegal uses of the ocean. And then of course, the most important as far as I'm concerned is education and training. You mentioned in your introduction that our coastline is 7,520 kilometers and our land frontier is almost more than double of it, 15,200 square kilometers. We as a coastal state, if you go 200 miles, nautical miles out from our coast, then all that area becomes India's exclusive economic zone. And we have got 2.37 million kilometers of it. And the land area of India is 3.27 million square kilometers, which means we are almost 2/3 of our land area is our exclusive economic zone. So it is a huge area which is under our control and on which we have full economic sovereignty. Then on top of that, the law of the sea also gives you continental shelf. So continental shelf can be extended beyond the exclusive economic zone sometimes, depending on how far your rocks have progressed into the shelf. So as a result of that, totally from the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, what we call as the western and the eastern continental shelf of India, we have another 700,000 square kilometers. Wow. So if you take this together, you are almost getting the same area as the land area of India in your ocean. And we have also got, to add to this, we have got navigable waterways. That means the waterways that are within India, within the land of India, freshwater river navigation as we call it. And that is up to 15,000 kilometers. So this is feeding into the ocean. So there is a connection between what we do on the land and what we do in the sea. As I've said, because all the waste goes through the sea, it goes through the rivers. So similarly, transportation also can go from rivers up to the sea mouth and up to the seaports. Boundaries, we have got maritime boundaries with Bangladesh, Indonesia, Maldives, Myanmar, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. We have got 12 ports in India, 12 major ports. Total goods handled by all 12 of our major ports is 700 million tons per year. Now, just to put it in perspective, this is exceeded by Shanghai alone or Singapore alone.
I see.
So these two ports alone do much more than 700 million tons per year.
Okay.
And Rotterdam, which is the 11th port in the world, is not too far behind 700 million tons. So there's a lot more we can do. Shipyards, we have got 21 shipyards, small and big. We have got 43 shipping companies, again, small and big. Number of ships is 1,500 compared to worldwide ships of 55,000. That's the number in the world. Very small number comparatively. And our gross registered tonnage is 12.69 millions, about 13 million tons, compared to 2 billion tons worldwide. Is that we have what is called as the Indian Register of Shipping. So something that most countries don't have. Only big countries have it, like the United States or the UK or Germany.
What's the opportunity that you are seeing here?
Yes. So the opportunities, are, I have come out with this idea of seven pillars of ocean governance. And these are science and technology, geopolitical economy, institutions and organizations, legislation and implementation, role of civil society, financial initiative, and education and awareness.
Sure.
And continuing with the opportunity, I think each one of us must speak about the right thing. So advocacy, doing the right thing. It is, I mean, I talk about things like it is our moral duty to give, or I talk about universal basic income. But most importantly, I talk about lawless to lawful, how to become lawless to lawful. And I do not mean it in the legal sense. I use the word law as an acronym for land, air, and water. Yeah.
Sure.
And in India, increasingly, we are finding that our lands are becoming less productive, our air is getting more polluted, and our water is getting more polluted.
Right.
And we have shortage of everything. We have shortage of land, we have shortage of air and water. That's why I call it lawless. So we want to move from becoming lawless to lawful. That's the other opportunity we have. Sure. Action in terms of what each one of us can do, what small organizations can do, what companies can do is actual direct action, doing something in the area of, let's say, water and sanitation, because all of that is ending up in the sea.
Absolutely correct.
Yes.
Correct.
And each one of us has to be that agent of change. That the last opportunity we have is arbitration. Rather than having litigations, if we can have mediation.
Yes. Absolutely.
That would be another great opportunity. And that is the kind of opportunities that I can readily think of in my mind.
Can you outline, Sunil, for us also, along with the opposition, let us see the challenges, because unless we know the challenges, we'll not be able to move ahead.
What is it that we are aiming in India or anywhere in the world for that matter? We are aiming our world to be more equitable. We want more justice in the world, and thereby we hope that we can achieve peace. That aim can only be achieved if we are able to balance. So balancing people, planet, and profit. And this will help us combat the main problems that we have, not just in India, all over the world, of death, disease, and destruction. And finally, I hope that because of that, we will get a dividend. And the dividend we already have in our country. We have democracy. We have demographically, we are also blessed, because 65% of India's people are under 35 years of age.
Yes.
So we have a young, dynamic population. And the third dividend that we have is demand.
So Sunil, what could be done immediately? Can you outline some steps which you think the government could take to take advantage of this vast coastline that we have?
Yes. Now, in my mind, the first thing that comes to my mind is regional cooperation. Now, there are some focus areas that we have. So first one is maritime safety and security, trade and investment facilitation. We need tourism and cultural exchanges to learn from each other. We need, of course, academic and science and technology exchanges. Then disaster and risk management. And of course, the key message to everybody from me is women's economic empowerment. And then, of course, the blue economy. Within blue economy, the top focus area would be fisheries and aquaculture. India is currently the third largest producer of fish and seafood produce in the world. Then renewable ocean energy, seaports and shipping, offshore hydrocarbons. Of course, we want to reduce our fossil fuels, but still, while they are there, we should make use of them, and we should make use of them in a more sustainable manner. And increasingly, seabed minerals, marine biotechnology, and of course, tourism and marine pollution. What I recommend actually at this stage is greater synergies between the user ministries within the government of India.
Can you talk about the future efforts in India about the blue economy?
Again, that blue economy contributes to 4% of India's total economy. Now, we are the third largest producer, 12 million tons of fish we produce from capture fisheries. So that's again very significant, considering that the worldwide production I said was 100 million tons. Now, the key thing we have to focus on is enhancing coastal and ocean resource efficiency. The next key area in my mind is something called the Sagarmala project,
Yes.
which is a counterpart of the Bharatmala project on
Yes.
land. But Bharatmala and Sagarmala together can be complementary to each other,
Yes,
because
absolutely.
we need the infrastructure,
Correct.
we need the transportation. Once the goods come to the sea, how do they get in land? Or
Right.
if something is produced in land, how does it go out? Then deep ocean mission. We are.
No,
So I think
I'm sure if we really take right steps, what you have mentioned, and you really, dwell into more of the blue economy, the
yes,
FDI also will increase, proportionately.
absolutely, absolutely.
Can you give us just one overview on on what immediately can be done? What are the low hanging fruits in the blue economy? What we could do and what we could achieve immediately in the
I
next
think
2 years, 3
the,
years?
the low hanging fruit in my view is focusing on our ports and harbors
I see.
and our infrastructure.
Sunil, during the talk last week and also yesterday, you mentioned about your initiative as far as India is concerned. Can you very briefly talk about what efforts you are trying to take in India?
Probably find a way in which I can impart whatever little I know, and perhaps try to enhance it with the help of other people who are similarly minded,
Sure.
and create this Indian National Center for Ocean Governance.
Thank you, Sunil. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.